Hello, welcome back. We've had a couple of people asking us many times to put together a little video of how to use Tabletop Simulator. So we're just going to walk you through some of the absolute basics for those of you who are a little bit intimidated by something that is arguably a slightly janky little program. Here we have a game we've just finished playing. For those people who watched on the stream, this was us playing a little roll and write game of cartographers with people on Twitch. It went pretty well. We had a cursed frog city over here, and I did quite badly. Tom won that by quite a margin. Anyway, we've finished with this game now, so obviously we have to pack it all away back into the box. No, we do not. That's not true at all. We can just go to games here, and we can just load up something new. And actually what I'm going to do here is I am going to load up the Frosthaven demo, which is basically a module based on the Gloomhaven module. First of all, things in Tabletop Simulator can take a little while to load, so don't be alarmed if things don't appear completely. And in this one, for example, we're actually going to have to, once it appears, we're actually going to have to load up some stuff. So this is going to be a really common thing you're going to see. So first of all, we want to go onto the game setup here. And as you can see, we've got the boxes and stuff, we've got some cards, but we've not really got any game here. So in this one, we're going to have to go in, sync scenarios to bring up some scenarios, and then just load up the first scenario and wait for that to pop in. This isn't going to be something you have to do in all games, but if there don't appear to be enough things here, then look around for the options, and there'll be a menu that will be able to bring up, which will help you load up the game. Games have varying levels. I keep pressing. Another key thing, pressing escape in Tabletop Simulator doesn't actually exit menus. It just brings up another menu. It's not the best program in the world, but it's got some pretty neat stuff about it once you get into it. So in this, for example, you're going to have some things if you want to actually add players, add player boards. You have to click them on to add these little player mats for people and adding play area. So you're going to have to click on some of these things to pop the board into life. The first thing we're going to do though, first of all, and this is something that you can really miss in Tabletop Simulator if you don't know what you're doing, you have to actually set yourself a player color. So here I have to click on my little name up here, and you'll have the option here, change color. So if you click on change color, then you'll see here, we have these little blobs appearing, which basically allow us to choose which player we're going to be. So I'm going to be the Mind Thief here, so I'll click here, and then it will actually assign this table to me and give me these cards. However, if I decide to want to sit somewhere else, I'd have to do that. It's important to do this because some mods, when you load them up, will automatically assign players, others won't, and it can be quite confusing, and you've got your player mat and you've got your pieces, but the cards aren't appearing in your hand. So you can see here now I've got cards in my hand. A simple thing is I can just Alt and hold down that to zoom in on cards, assets, whatever I want. If you want to see a bigger version of anything, you can hold down Alt and it will come up on the screen really big so you can view stuff. You can, of course, use the mouse wheel to zoom in and look at things. But generally speaking, being able to hold down Alt just to get a quick look on things is really useful. And you'll see obviously we've got some cards in our hand here. We'll come back to that in a little bit. So first of all, when we have a deck of cards, we can drag a single card off the top. And this is important. If you want to drag just one card, you have to just click and drag quickly because that will take a single card. However, if we click and hold, then it's going to pick up the entire stack of cards. Now, whether we picked up the stack of cards or just a single card, you press F and it's going to flip the card. And so you can reveal them and let go and drop them. Now, the other thing we've got is you can rotate stuff. You can press Q and E to rotate things. Useful to varying degrees, frankly. And other things that are very useful to know is obviously a lot of the stuff in this, if you have a card, if you want to drop it back onto a deck, if you just drop it on top, it will go back. Key thing is going to be shuffling cards. You don't have to pick up the deck to shuffle it as you do with human hands. You can just hover over it and press R, and you'll see that little spinny animation there means the cards have been shuffled. Conversely, if we have some cards that have been mishandled and thrown around in such a way, and you have a big handful of cards over here, and you think, what have I done? Then you can just select them all and press G, and that will just group them all together to be put back onto a stack or to be shuffled. There we are. When it works, it all works. Neatly smooshes in. You can also just type a number whilst on a deck of cards to draw that many cards into your hand. Now, for example, I've got these cards in my hand here, which you'll see they follow me around the table. Now, whether or not you want to use this functionality, it's up to you. I quite like it sometimes, but I find particularly in Gloomhaven, I like to be able to see the cards and move them around and put them in different places. So what I'm actually going to do here, you'll notice that my hand of cards are here. I can drag them away and just put them somewhere else. And now they're individual objects. I can just sort of move around and zoom around. And this is just the way I like to do it. However, if I wanted to bring something back into my hand, I could just presumably just tap 1 on one card and it will just drag it up into my hand. However, if I've got these cards and I've grouped them together, and the good thing about this is they can be flipped, I can just press 3, 4, and it's going to draw 4 cards into my hand, and it's automatically going to flip them over as you would whilst drawing cards. Now, the key thing is, in most games where you have a secret hand of cards, you're going to want to have this mechanic of drawing cards up into your hand, because obviously in most mods that involve that, it will then hide the identity of those cards and people won't be able to see what you've got. And anything that you put out is important. It's also very important to remember that if you're playing cards and you want them to be face down, that you flip them in your hand before you pull them out of your hand. Not that it matters that much, but it's the equivalent of taking a card from your hand and then doing this and then flipping it over and putting it on the table, which is maybe not ideal. So there's a little bit of fiddliness there, and there may be some ways I don't know about to get around some of this stuff. So if you're watching this, if we put this on YouTube in some fashion, you're watching this and you have some great tips that we haven't mentioned here that are essential, then please do share them with us for as much as anyone else. And there are some important things to note about shuffling. Like in some of the mods you're going to play on this, they have coded in things like bags. So if you play Quacks of Quedlinburg or something like that, if you have games that feature bags rather than decks of cards, it's important to note that bags function in exactly the same way as decks of cards, which means if you put a piece in a bag, it will come out first. So if you're playing any game that involves bags, then do remember you're going to need to shuffle them all the time. Every time you put something in, shuffle it, because otherwise you're going to feel like you get some very strange luck going on there. So that's a little quirk in the system. And now the last tip, which is pretty useful, is if you hold down Alt and Shift, you can look at the back of something, which is really useful. So let's say, for example, I'm playing this and I put down my little card here, meaning, okay, that's going to be my initiative card, and then I'm moving around, I think, well, what card did I put there? I can just hold down Alt and Shift, and it will show me the other side of the card that is in that position. So if you put something face down on the table and you want to look at it again, you can do that, all without showing anyone else, or without flipping it out, or without using your human hands in a physical realm. And I think that is about it. The only other thing I would mention about this is it does tend to autosave. So if you do lose an internet connection or something goes wrong, you will be able to load up your game again. But sometimes you have some details, such as things you've written on boards, etc., will not be saved unless you manually save the game. So it's important to do that if you're playing a campaign and you really want the details to be kept. And there are all sorts of different tools on this side of the screen that allow you to do different sorts of things. Some of them are quite amusing, like flicking. You can just flick an object. It's kind of neat, but the main thing is you don't really want it most of the time. You'll just want the basic tool. If you find you're clicking on things and it's doing really strange things, you've probably accidentally activated one of these tools and you probably want to change that. Having said that, I would say that this is an interesting program to mess around with. There's some odd stuff in here, and a lot of the systems, because they are made by fans, are not ideal, but there's a lot you can do to kind of fudge stuff, and it's worth having a look in the sections like the objects section, which allows you to go and bring up custom components like dice, through to some quite fascinating things like tools, for example, a calculator or a digital clock or a notepad or an actual tablet. There's something about this I find deeply uncanny, in the fact that, yeah, you can actually make a kind of mini fake iPad within the world and then surf the internet on it. Like, I could go to shutupandsitdown.com within Board Game Simulator. I'm inside the computer. I don't like it. Flip it. Also, if you press and hold plus and minus, then you can make objects smaller or bigger, which means you can plonk gigantic calculators onto people's player boards when they're not expecting it, which is very funny. Or, a personal favourite of mine, just go to someone's cards and just make their cards ever so slightly, just make something ever so slightly smaller. Just make one of their cards a little bit smaller. Treat yourself, you know? You can't do that in real life, so you might as well enjoy. The final thing I will say is you can use Control-C and Control-V to copy and paste objects. Very useful in some games, dangerous in others. Some games you really don't want duplicates of things knocking around, so be careful with that. And also, if you are a weird computer nerd like me, be very careful to start using Control-C and Control-V, because you are a hair's breadth away from accidentally pressing Control-Z, which will undo the last thing that got done. And you can see now that everything's frozen because I've done that. The problem is, undoing in this, it's not really made for it. You can do it in the event that something has happened, but it's funny and fuzzy and it might undo things you don't want it to, and it will take a while to reload everything again. So it's useful in a pinch. If something goes really wrong and you don't know what's going on, Control-Z, do it. But if you're like me and you're a bit trigger happy and you're always pressing those buttons, then just be wary of keeping your hand there, because you will keep freezing the game repeatedly. Otherwise, that is it. That is the end of this little guide to how to play with Tabletop Simulator. Go out there and have fictional fun with your fictional digital friends. Wazazazazu! And that's how to do it. And now, that's how to do it. Thank you. Bye.